She didn't even hesitate. HOA Karen raised the handgun and aimed it straight at my 17-year-old daughter's chest, right there in the middle of a crowded city park. Kids froze mid-swing, families stopped eating, and the entire playground went silent except for Karen's shaking voice screaming, "She threatened me. She's dangerous." My daughter stood trembling, hands up, whispering, "Ma'am, please. I didn't do anything." I heard the commotion from across the field and sprinted toward them, my heart punching my ribs. People were recording, but no one dared step closer. Karen's finger curled dangerously near the trigger as she kept shouting lies, things that made no sense. But then, something caught my eye. A small boy holding a phone, standing right behind Karen, recording everything she didn't know she was exposing. And just as I got close enough to see Karen's eyes, she tightened her grip, and the gun clicked. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Which city are you watching from? Comment your city down below, because stories like this happen everywhere. And before we begin, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another real-life story that could happen to any family in America. Now, I'm the father in this story, and trust me, I still feel my hands shaking when I remember what happened that afternoon. We weren't even supposed to be at the park that day. My daughter had just finished a small volunteer project with her school, and we decided to stop by the city park for a quick walk, some air, and a moment to decompress. It should have been peaceful. It should have been safe. But the moment we arrived, I noticed her, Karen, standing by the HOA community board near the entrance, glaring at people like she owned the entire place. We'd crossed paths with her once before when she complained about my daughter walking too close to her roses, near the HOA gate. Back then, I thought it was just typical neighborhood drama, annoying, but nothing dangerous. I never imagined that same woman would be holding a loaded handgun, screaming lies, and threatening my child in front of dozens of witnesses. But as we walked into the park that day, completely unaware of how quickly everything would escalate, I noticed Karen was watching my daughter with an intensity one didn't understand. She wasn't just irritated, she was looking for a reason, any reason, to start something. And the moment my daughter stepped toward the playground to help a little kid who had dropped his drink, Karen found her excuse, and everything spiraled out of control faster than any parent could have prepared for. The day had started like any other volunteer outing, with my daughter stepping out of the car holding her small tote bag filled with gloves, trash bags, and bottled water, simple supplies for their school's community cleanup assignment at the city park. She was calm, smiling even, the way she always was when she was doing something kind for others. She'd signed up for this project weeks ago, excited to help clean up the walking paths, paint a few benches, and assist the younger children who came to play there after school. The sun was warm, the air smelled faintly of cut grass, and for a moment everything felt peaceful, until we heard the sharp, shrill voice ricochet across the open field. Karen. She was already in the middle of her usual theatrics, pointing at a few high school volunteers near the fountain and yelling, "You're ruining the grass. This is HOA property, not your personal playground," despite the fact that the park was public and the teens were literally picking up trash, not damaging anything. Parents nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances, some whispering under their breaths, others shrugging like they'd seen this show before. My daughter froze momentarily, watching Karen with a mixture of confusion and concern, but then she shook it off and walked toward her group of classmates who were gathering around their teacher for instructions. Still, I noticed something. Karen's eyes followed her. Not the group. Not the trash bags. Just her. As if she'd been waiting for her specifically. I brushed it off as paranoia, but there was something unsettling about the intensity in Karen's stare, something I couldn't put my finger on. My daughter, oblivious, tied her hair into a ponytail and began working immediately. She bent down to pick up discarded soda cans near a bench, gently helped a blind boy adjust his white cane after he accidentally dropped it, and even paused to give a little girl her extra bottle of water. Every small act of kindness made me proud, but strangely, with each act, Karen's scowl deepened. She muttered to herself, pacing near the HOA community bulletin board, arms folded tightly, jaw clenched like she was collecting evidence for some imaginary court case. I could hear snippets of her ranting, disrespectful, entitled, thinks she owns the place. None of it made sense because my daughter had literally not done a single thing wrong. She hadn't even spoken to Karen. She was simply doing exactly what the volunteer group had been assigned to do. Yet Karen continued watching her like a hawk stalking prey. At one point, my daughter bent down beside the sandbox to pick up a piece of broken plastic, unaware that Karen had stepped several feet closer, eyeing her like she'd spotted a thief. When my daughter stood back up, smiling politely at a toddler who toddled past, Karen threw her hands up dramatically. "Are you serious?" she shouted loud enough for half the park to hear. My daughter flinched and turned, startled. "Ma'am, are you talking to me?" she asked gently. Karen marched toward her, finger pointed like a weapon. "Yes, you. Don't play dumb. I saw what you did." My daughter blinked. What did I do?" Karen scoffed like she had just heard the world's most offensive lie. "You were mocking that blind boy. I saw you laughing at him." People around gasped quietly, not because they believed her, but because the accusation was so twisted, so deliberately cruel, it felt unreal. My daughter's face fell instantly, her voice cracking as she said, "No. I wasn't laughing at him, I helped him. He dropped his cane, so I gave it back to him." Even the boy's mother, standing nearby, raised her hand and said, "Yes, I saw her help him." There was no laughing. But Karen wasn't listening. She wasn't interested in the truth. She'd already decided on her version of reality, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to change it. She stepped closer to my daughter, invading her space, eyes locked with an obsession that made my stomach twist. "You teenagers think you're clever," she hissed. "But I know what you're really doing here. I know the kind of girl you are." The words were venomous, coated with something personal, too personal. My daughter didn't know this woman, yet Karen's tone suggested she'd built an entire narrative in her head. My daughter whispered, "I didn't do anything to you," but Karen cut her off with a bark of laughter. "Oh, you did. You just don't realize it yet." A chill ran down my spine. What did she mean by that? What something was Karen convinced my daughter had done? That was the first moment I sensed it. This wasn't about the park, or grass, or volunteer work. This was something deeper, something Karen had been holding on to, waiting for the right moment to erupt. Before my daughter could respond, her teacher called out that the group needed to move to the other side of the park to clean around the picnic tables. My daughter nodded quickly, eager to escape the confrontation, and walked away with her classmates. But Karen didn't move. She didn't leave. She didn't even glance at anyone else. She just watched my daughter's every step with an expression that made my heart pound. Slow. Focused. Calculated. And as my daughter disappeared behind the row of trees near the picnic area, Karen took a step forward. Then another. Then another. Quietly. Purposefully. Following her. Not yelling now. Not complaining. Just stalking her like she had finally found the opportunity she'd been waiting for, and I knew, in that moment, something very bad was about to happen. As my daughter and her classmates moved toward the picnic area, I tried to shake off the discomfort twisting in my chest, but something about Karen's slow, deliberate steps behind them wouldn't leave my mind. She wasn't ranting now, no dramatic gestures, no loud accusations, just a quiet, unsettling stalk, like she was studying my daughter's every move. The volunteer group split into pairs to clean around the benches, and my daughter knelt to pick up chip bags and juice cartons while chatting with a friend about school. She looked relaxed again, unaware of the storm forming behind her. Karen stood several feet away, hands on her hips, pretending to survey the park like she was on official duty. Then, suddenly, she took out her phone and began recording, zooming in specifically on my daughter, whispering comments under her breath like, "There, caught you red-handed, even though my daughter was literally just collecting trash. At one point, my daughter used a small speaker her teacher provided to play soft instrumental music while the group worked. It was low enough that even toddlers napping in strollers weren't disturbed, but Karen stomped over, shouting, "Turn that down. This is a noise violation." The teacher calmly explained it was permitted for the volunteer event and barely above conversation level, but Karen shook her head fiercely. "I'll be reporting all of this to the HOA. You're trespassing on managed property." A father nearby corrected her gently, saying, "Ma'am, this is a public park. The HOA doesn't own this area." Karen snapped at him, "I know exactly what the HOA owns. I'm on the committee." Though everyone knew she wasn't, she'd only attended meetings as a disruptive guest, never as a member. Still, she marched around claiming authority, scolding teens for sitting on picnic benches, accusing them of damaging public property when they shifted a trash can 2 feet over to sweep underneath. A group of mothers sitting at a nearby table whispered, "She's doing this again, she needs help," and one even approached the teacher apologetically, explaining that Karen had a history of targeting random kids for imagined offenses. My daughter overheard part of this and tried to reassure her friend, saying softly, "It's okay, maybe she's just stressed." But I could see her shoulders tightening, the way she forced a smile, the way her eyes kept flicking nervously toward Karen. Meanwhile, Karen continued recording her obsessively, muttering phrases like, "Got you, you won't get away with this," as if she were documenting a crime scene. She even repositioned herself to capture angles, over the shoulder, from behind a tree, from the top of the small hill overlooking the picnic area, like she was gathering evidence for a case she fully intended to build. I finally approached her, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Ma'am, is there something wrong?" She looked at me like she'd been waiting for that moment, eyes narrowing, lips twisting into a cold smile. "Oh, plenty. But you wouldn't understand, parents like you never do." I frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She tapped her phone dramatically. "Your daughter thinks she's clever, but I know the truth. I know what she's doing." My heart thudded. "She's helping clean the park. That's all." Karen chuckled, an eerie, humorless sound. "Sure. Keep believing that." Then she turned sharply and walked away, leaving me stunned and confused. Minutes later, I saw her cornering 2 elderly HOA members near the drinking fountain, waving her phone frantically. I couldn't hear everything, but her voice carried bits of madness. "She's vandalizing, she mocked a disabled child, she's dangerous. I have proof." The elderly couple exchanged an awkward glance. One whispered, "Karen, that girl didn't do anything," but Karen talked over them, insisting the community needed to take action. The couple eventually walked away, visibly uncomfortable, leaving Karen muttering in frustration. And then, something shifted. She stood alone for a moment, scrolling through her phone, zooming in on one of the videos she'd taken. Her eyebrows shot up. Her lips twitched. And her expression changed from irritation to triumph. She had seen something. Something she thought she could use. She looked up sharply, eyes locking onto my daughter with a mix of discovery and obsession. She whispered, "I knew it," and her entire demeanor darkened. My daughter had just finished cleaning around the picnic tables and stepped aside to text her friend. Karen stomped toward her with the intensity of a charging bull. My daughter looked up, startled, as Karen jabbed a finger near her face and shouted, "I saw your messages. I know who you are." My daughter flinched, confused and terrified. "What are you talking about? You saw what messages?" Karen waved her phone. "I saw you texting earlier. I zoomed in. I know exactly what you're planning." But my daughter hadn't texted anything other than asking her friend if she wanted to get smoothies after the cleanup. Karen twisted it into something else, something personal and paranoid. People nearby stepped closer, sensing danger. The teacher hurried over. I felt my heartbeat slam against my ribs. Karen leaned in, her voice low, dripping with rage. You think you can ruin my life the way she did? You think you can replace everything I lost? My daughter whispered, "Ma'am, I don't even know you," but Karen wasn't listening, not to reason, not to reality. She was spiraling. And with that terrifying, unblinking stare, she took one more step forward. Close enough to make my daughter stumble back in fear. And in that moment, I knew the situation was no longer just strange or uncomfortable. Karen had snapped, and something far more dangerous was coming. My daughter and her classmates reached the picnic table area, spreading out with gloves and trash bags, laughing softly as they worked, unaware that danger was silently moving closer behind them. The sun dipped slightly behind the trees, casting long shadows across the field, shadows Karen used to her advantage. She stayed just far enough behind to not be noticed, yet close enough to hear every word, studying my daughter like she was analyzing an enemy's weak points. I stayed on the opposite side of the park for a few minutes, talking to a parent about the volunteer activity, but kept glancing over to check on my daughter. She seemed okay. Or so I thought. At one point, my daughter knelt beside a bench where an elderly couple sat, asking, "Would you like me to pick up these bottles for you?" They smiled and thanked her. That small moment of kindness should have been nothing more than a warm interaction, but Karen interpreted it as something sinister. She muttered, "Manipulative girl," pretending to care in front of people, and pulled out her phone, zooming in to record my daughter like she was catching a criminal red-handed. When my daughter moved to help another group of kids carry a heavy trash bag toward the disposal bin, Karen followed, this time more aggressively. Her breathing louder, her footsteps quicker. She began narrating lies into her phone camera. Here she is stealing garbage bags, now she's trying to distract those kids, these teens are plotting something. A few parents noticed her strange behavior and exchanged confused looks, but none stepped in yet. They assumed she was just another overdramatic HOA member making complaints for social media. Meanwhile, my daughter noticed nothing. She was too busy working, laughing, and trying to keep the younger volunteers motivated. But the tension was building, and Karen was reaching her breaking point. Suddenly, one of the little boys tripped while running, spilling a bag of collected recycling across the grass. My daughter rushed over and bent down to help him pick it up. That single, harmless action snapped something inside Karen like a fuse blowing in a dark room. She stormed forward, shouting, "Stop right there," startling everyone, including the little boy who burst into tears. My daughter froze mid-motion, eyes wide, confused. "Ma'am, what's wrong now?" Karen jabbed her finger at her. "You're stealing that boy's phone. I saw you pickpocket him." The entire area went silent. Parents stared. Teens dropped their trash bags. Even the crying boy stopped for a moment, confused by the accusation. My daughter looked at the boy and whispered, "I'm just helping you, you fell." The boy nodded, sniffling. "She helped me, she didn't take anything." Karen's face turned a bright, furious red. She hated being contradicted. "Oh, of course he'll defend you. That's what manipulators do, they turn kids against adults," she snapped, shaking with anger. My daughter's teacher stepped in, approaching calmly but firmly. "Karen, please stop. She's doing her volunteer work. None of what you're saying is true." But Karen wasn't listening. Her mind was spiraling, twisting every reality into her own version. She stepped closer, too close, and hissed in my daughter's face, "Your father thinks he can break HOA rules and get away with it. And now you're walking around here like you own the place. I won't tolerate criminals in my community." My daughter took a shaky step back. "My dad didn't break anything, and I don't even live inside your HOA boundary. I'm just volunteering." Karen smirked. "Oh, I know you don't live here. But he filed a complaint about me months ago. You think I forgot?" "No, sweetie, I never forget." And then it clicked, Karen wasn't obsessed with my daughter because of anything she did. She was obsessed because of me. I had filed an official report 2 months earlier after Karen verbally assaulted a delivery driver outside our neighborhood gate. The HOA dismissed her complaint. She blamed me. She saw my last name on the school volunteer list. She connected the dots. And today, she was getting her revenge. Before my daughter or the teacher could respond, Karen suddenly yanked out a small spray can from her bag, pepper spray, and pointed it directly at my daughter's face. The kids screamed. The teacher jumped back. My daughter's breath hitched in terror. "You assaulted me," Karen yelled dramatically. "You shoved that kid to the ground and tried to steal from him." I'm defending myself. But it was all lies, everyone saw the truth. The boy cried loudly, "She didn't hurt me. I fell by myself." Parents began yelling at Karen to stop. A father stepped forward, "Lady, put the spray down before someone gets hurt." But Karen wasn't backing off. Her hand trembled violently, knuckles white from gripping the can too hard. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for justification to attack. The teacher held up her hands. "Karen, let's calm down and talk. Don't tell me to calm down." Karen screeched, voice cracking with rage. My daughter stood rooted to the spot, tears gathering in her eyes, begging softly, "Please." I didn't do anything. That pleading made Karen even angrier. "Stop pretending. I know exactly what you're doing. You're filming me, aren't you?" she accused, although my daughter wasn't holding a phone at all. The teacher gestured to the group. "Everyone, step back." Karen interpreted that as a threat. She pointed the spray even closer, her fingers twitching. "Back off or I swear I will." She never finished the sentence. I finally saw the commotion from across the field and sprinted toward them, shouting my daughter's name. She turned, relieved, but that relief lasted only a second, because Karen turned too, eyes widening when she saw me running. And that was the moment everything changed. Karen shoved the pepper spray back into her bag, reached deeper, and pulled out something far more dangerous. Something metal. Something heavy. Something she had no right carrying in a park filled with children. A handgun. Parents screamed. Kids scattered. And Karen, shaking with rage, lifted the weapon and aimed it straight at my daughter's chest, her voice cracking as she yelled, "This ends now." My daughter had barely reached the picnic table area when I saw Karen accelerating her pace, her steps sharp and heavy like each one carried a purpose she'd been rehearsing for weeks. The volunteer group had begun clearing scattered cups and wrappers near the barbecue pits, laughing softly among themselves, the normal sounds of teenagers just doing their part for the community. My daughter moved to the side to help a little girl zip her jacket, her gentle voice floating across the field, but Karen's voice suddenly sliced through the air like broken glass. "Don't touch that child," she screamed, charging forward. The little girl's eyes widened in fear as Karen shoved her own body between them, nearly knocking the kid over. My daughter gasped and stepped back, hands up, saying, "Ma'am, I was just helping her," but Karen didn't give her even a breath to finish. She spun toward the growing crowd and shouted, "She just shoved me. She put her hands on me. I have it on camera." Several parents paused, stunned, whispering to each other because they had seen the complete opposite. The little girl's mother rushed over, furious, yelling, "Don't you lie about my child or this teen." But Karen ignored her, grabbing her phone like she was about to present the world's most incriminating evidence, except the screen showed nothing, no recording, no video, not even a camera app open. Still, she held it up theatrically, twisting the narrative with a confidence only someone who had rehearsed this scene many times could possess. My daughter's teacher stepped between them and said calmly, "Ma'am, she didn't touch you." "I was right there." Karen snapped back, "Liar. You teachers always cover for these teens." Her voice shook with rage, but beneath it, I noticed something new, fear. Not the fear of being hurt, but the fear of losing control over a story she was desperately trying to spin. And then she did something that made the air around us freeze. She stepped aside, pulled her phone close to her mouth, and hissed, "It's happening. I need you here. Now." She wasn't calling 911. She wasn't calling the HOA. She was calling someone personal. Someone dangerous. Her son. The same son neighbors whispered about, the one with the hot temper, the gun obsession, and the belief that every minor disagreement was a battlefield. She didn't even try to hide the call. She looked directly at my daughter while making it, like she wanted her to hear every word. "Yes," Karen said into the phone, pacing rapidly. "She attacked me. She tried to shove a child. Get here with your stuff. People need to be taught a lesson." My daughter's face went pale. The teacher tried to intervene, raising his hands. "Ma'am, that's completely false, silence." Karen shrieked, then lowered her voice into a chilling whisper as she leaned closer to him. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Parents began pulling their children closer. A man jogging by slowed down, taking out his phone, whispering to another dad, "This looks bad, someone should call the cops." But Karen turned on him instantly. "Delete that video. You can't record me without permission. This park belongs to the HOA." The jogger rolled his eyes and said, "Lady, this is a public park," but even he took a step back as Karen stormed toward my daughter again, her breath shaking, her eyes wild with something deeper than anger, obsession, hatred, and desperation tangled into one unstable force. "You," Karen spat, pointing at her. "You thought I wouldn't find out? You thought I wouldn't recognize you from that day?" My daughter stepped back, confused. "What day? I don't even know you, don't lie." Karen screamed, causing several people to flinch. "You were the girl who walked on private HOA property last month. My flowers, my roses, you ruined them." My daughter shook her head. "That wasn't me, ma'am. I wasn't even in the area." Karen cut her off with a harsh laugh. "Oh, you teenagers think you can hide behind innocence. But I have proof. I always have proof." Her voice cracked, her face reddening as she pulled a crumpled printed photo from her bag, a photo of a teen girl who looked vaguely similar to my daughter but clearly wasn't her. The hair was different, the build was different, the outfit was different, but Karen held it up proudly, as if she just revealed a smoking gun. "This is you," she insisted. "Don't pretend it's not." The crowd stared, bewildered, because it was so obviously not her. Even the little girl's mother shook her head. "Ma'am, that is not this kid." But Karen wasn't listening, she was spiraling. Her breathing became erratic, her hands trembling violently as she clutched the photo, repeating, "I know who you are. I know what you do," like she was convincing herself more than anyone else. Then, as if remembering her earlier lie, she suddenly screamed again, "She assaulted me. She needs to be restrained." The teacher stepped forward again. "Ma'am, no one here saw anything like that. Please calm down." Karen's lips curled into a sinister, sarcastic smile. "Oh, but they will see it now." She turned dramatically toward the parents, raising her voice to an alarming pitch, "Everyone step back. She's trying to attack me again." My daughter hadn't moved an inch. Not even a step. She was frozen in shock, tears forming in her eyes as the weight of false accusations crashed onto her. I started running from the other side of the park, weaving through crowds, shouting her name, but my voice drowned under the rising chaos. Karen lifted her chin and said loudly, "My son is on the way. And when he gets here, he'll handle her the way she deserves." The implication hung in the air like a dark cloud. Karen wasn't talking about a conversation. She was talking about violence. Serious violence. A murmur of fear rippled through the crowd, and that's when it happened, a crucial shift. A teenage boy from the volunteer group stepped forward, gently holding up his phone. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady, "I recorded everything. You followed her. You yelled at her. She never touched you. She never hurt anyone." Karen froze, eyes snapping toward him. Her jaw tightened. "Delete it," she demanded. "Now." "No," he answered firmly. "I'm showing this to the police if I have to." Karen's eyes narrowed into thin, murderous slits. She took one slow step toward him and hissed, "You don't understand. This is bigger than you." The boy swallowed hard but didn't back down. "I understand enough," he whispered. The tension became suffocating. Karen turned away, breathing hard, looking around as if calculating her next move, her next lie, her next dramatic escalation. And then, with a sudden eerie calm, she stopped shaking. Her shoulders lowered. Her expression changed, not angry now, but eerily controlled, like she had just remembered a secret weapon she'd been saving for the perfect moment. She reached into her bag slowly, deliberately, her eyes locked on my daughter with a chilling finality. And the entire park held its breath. The moment Karen reached into her oversized leather bag, everything around my daughter seemed to blur, as if the entire park inhaled and forgot how to breathe. Children slowed on their swings, dogs paused mid-bark, and conversations died mid-sentence. My daughter, standing only a few steps away from the picnic tables where she had been sorting trash bags, froze when she saw the glint of metal in Karen's hand. Her eyes widened, her breath caught, and her voice cracked as she whispered, "Ma'am, please don't." But Karen wasn't listening. She yanked the handgun out with a shaky, furious hand, raising it directly at my daughter's chest, her lips trembling with rage as she screamed, "Stay back. I'm warning you." The other volunteers shrieked and scattered, ducking behind benches or fleeing toward the grass. Parents grabbed their children and ran, shouting into their phones, while a few people stayed rooted in place, too shocked to move, their hands covering their mouths as they watched this nightmare unfold. My daughter slowly lifted her hands, palms open, tears filling her eyes as she tried to de-escalate the situation with a broken voice. "I didn't do anything to you. I'm just volunteering, please put the gun down." But Karen's face twisted in a manic blend of fury and delusion. She jabbed the gun forward as if every inch mattered. "You lied to me. You humiliated me in front of the HOA. You think you can ruin my life and walk away?" Her voice screeched across the park like a siren. My daughter trembled, completely confused, whispering, "I don't know what you're talking about." Meanwhile, across the park, I heard the rising panic but didn't yet understand what was happening. All I could hear were the words, "Gun, girl, she's aiming at her," and the unmistakable sound of terrified screaming. My heart hammered so violently I thought I'd pass out as I sprinted across the field, leaping over a picnic bench, shouting my daughter's name, "Emily. Emily, don't move." But my screams were drowned out by Karen's hysterical ranting. She waved the gun erratically, her finger dangerously close to the trigger, her knuckles white from the force of her grip. She threatened me. Karen shrieked. She tried to attack me. I have every right to defend myself. People recording gasped and whispered, "That girl didn't threaten her, she was helping kids, this lady is crazy." Phones were up everywhere, shaky hands, zoomed-in screens, panicked commentary, but none of those recordings came close to the one video that would later break everything open. A young boy, no more than 10, had crept up behind Karen, standing only a few feet away, recording the entire scene with steady hands while hiding behind a slim tree trunk. Karen had absolutely no idea. My daughter saw the boy and sobbed, "Please go, you're too close, she has a gun." But the boy didn't budge, his eyes wide with fear yet somehow brave enough to document the truth no one else dared to capture so close. Meanwhile, Karen's delusions only escalated. "You teenagers are all the same," she screamed. "You think you can break rules, disrespect the community, and get away with it. Not today." She stepped closer to my daughter, gun raised higher, her finger beginning to curl around the trigger. My daughter stumbled backward until her back hit the corner of a metal picnic table, sending a loud clang echoing across the park, tightening the tension like a noose. "Stop moving!" Karen shrieked. I said stop. By now, my lungs felt like fire as I tore across the grass, but the distance between us felt impossibly long, like the world had slowed just to torture me with every second. "Put the gun down," I shouted, voice cracking with desperation. Some bystanders screamed at Karen, "What's wrong with you? She's just a kid." Others yelled for my daughter to stay still. A woman dialed 911 with shaking hands, repeating, "There's an armed woman at the city park. Yes, she's pointing it at a teenage girl. Send police now." As the chaos swirled, something chilling happened, the faint wail of police sirens in the distance. Karen stiffened, her eyes darting around as if realizing she was running out of time. She pressed the gun closer toward my daughter, whispering something so low only the boy's camera caught it. "You should have never embarrassed me, you ruined everything," my daughter whimpered. "I didn't. I don't even know you," but Karen's expression remained twisted in that terrifying mixture of anger and paranoia. People were yelling, crying, praying, yet everything suddenly felt distant to me, muffled, as if I were underwater. My entire world narrowed to the sight of that gun aimed at my child. I pushed my legs harder even though they were burning, screaming her name again and again. And just as I got close enough that I could see the tiny movement of Karen's index finger tightening, everything froze. My daughter's eyes shut tight. Karen's breath hitched. The gun clicked again, louder this time. The boy behind Karen gasped softly, capturing every horrifying second from just a few feet away. The sirens grew louder, flooding the air. And in that suspended, terrible moment, no one knew what would happen next. Before Karen could even pull the trigger, the sound of police sirens sliced through the frozen silence of the park, blue and red lights flickering across terrified faces as two officers sprinted toward the scene with their weapons drawn, shouting commands for everyone to back away. Karen jerked, startled, but instantly shifted into her favorite role, the victim, swinging the gun away from my daughter and pointing at her instead as she shrieked, "Officer! Arrest her! She attacked me! She tried to take my gun!" Her voice cracked with a performance so polished that, for a split second, a few people actually gasped, until my daughter, trembling and barely able to speak, whispered, "I didn't. I never touched her." The officers demanded Karen drop the firearm, but she refused, insisting she acted in self-defense against a violent teenager who had threatened her life. The lies spilled out of her like they were memorized lines from a script she'd been practicing for weeks. She went on, pointing wildly, shaking, sobbing fake tears, claiming my daughter had pushed her, insulted her, even tried to grab the blind boy's cane to mock a disabled child. It was so absurd that even the crowd, who had been stunned into silence, finally erupted with anger. "She's lying," someone yelled. "Your daughter didn't do a thing," another shouted. The blind boy's mother stepped forward, voice trembling with fury as she told the officers, "My son dropped his cane. Her daughter helped him. That woman," she pointed at Karen, "has been yelling at everyone all afternoon." The park visitors chimed in one after another, the elderly couple who saw my daughter picking trash, the teenagers who watched Karen stalk her, the parents who saw Karen screaming at volunteers for no reason. But still, Karen clung to her story, screaming louder to drown out the truth, shouting, "They're all lying. They're covering for her," until an officer calmly approached the little boy standing behind her. Yes, the same child Karen had ignored, the same child who had bravely recorded everything from just a few feet away. "Son," the officer said gently, "were you recording?" The boy nodded silently and handed over the phone. "Right there. In front of everyone. In front of Karen. In front of my terrified daughter." The officer pressed play. And the truth poured out. The video showed everything: the moment Karen followed my daughter across the park, the moment she accused her of mocking the blind child, the moment my daughter cried and pleaded for Karen to stop, the moment Karen grabbed her own bag, unzipped it, and pulled out the handgun with deliberate intention, raising it toward a teenager who had done absolutely nothing wrong. Karen's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for an excuse, but the lies had finally hit a wall she couldn't climb over. The officer paused the video halfway through and asked her, "Ma'am, do you still want to claim self-defense?" Her lips trembled, but instead of backing down, she snapped, "She deserved it. She started everything. Her family has been harassing me for months." That's when the real truth, the part none of us knew, finally surfaced. An older man, a resident from our HOA, stepped forward hesitantly and said, "Officer, she's been trying to get that family fined for months. She filed fake HOA violations, about their fence, their plants, their parking. She's obsessed with policing everyone. The board warned her twice." Another woman added, "She hates his daughter because she looks like the girl who scratched her car last year." Karen could never prove it, but she convinced herself it was her. Suddenly, everything made sense: the glares, the stalking, the irrational anger. This wasn't about trash or grass or volunteers. This was about Karen's personal vendetta built entirely on assumptions and her desperate need for control. My daughter collapsed into my arms, sobbing into my chest as I held her tightly, overwhelmed, furious, and relieved all at once. But before the officers could handcuff Karen, another voice broke through the chaos: her son. He sprinted toward us, out of breath, face pale, eyes wide with disbelief as he took in the scene, his mother holding a handgun, police surrounding her, witnesses shouting, video evidence playing on repeat. "Mom. Mom, what did you do?" He grabbed her arm, trying to steady her, but Karen jerked away, screaming, "I did this for you. I was protecting the neighborhood. I was stopping them." Her son stared at her like he didn't recognize her. "Mom, this is a 17-year-old girl. What is wrong with you?" His voice cracked as tears rolled down his face. He turned to the officers and whispered, "Please, please do whatever you have to do." And then, as the police finally pried the gun from Karen's shaking hands and placed her in handcuffs, one officer reached into her bag to secure the rest of her belongings, and froze. "Ma'am," he called to his partner, "you need to see this." He lifted a second item from the bag, a small, handwritten list of names, including my daughter's. Alongside each name were notes, checkmarks, complaints, even days and times people had walked past Karen's house. It wasn't just obsession. It wasn't just anger. It was something darker. Something planned. Something that sent a chilling wave through the entire crowd. And as Karen was escorted to the police car screaming that she was just doing her duty, every parent in that park realized the same horrifying truth: this could have happened to any one of our children if she had fixated on them instead. The moment Karen's hand slipped into her oversized purse, the atmosphere around the picnic tables shifted, like the entire park sensed something was wrong before anyone even saw the weapon. My daughter stepped back, confused and frightened, her hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace as she whispered, "Ma'am, please. I don't want any trouble." But Karen wasn't listening, her face twisted with a level of rage that didn't belong in a normal confrontation, her breath shaky, her mutters borderline incoherent as she rummaged deeper into her bag. Then, in one horrifying motion, she yanked out a black handgun and pointed it directly at my daughter's chest. The world froze. A mother screamed. Someone dropped a soda can. Children who had been running moments before suddenly stood still, their laughter evaporating into stunned silence. My daughter gasped, instinctively stepping backward until her heel hit one of the wooden park benches, trapping her in place as Karen advanced with the handgun held in both trembling hands. "Don't you move!" Karen shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "I know what you were doing. You think I'm stupid? You think you can get away with this?" My daughter shook her head desperately, her voice trembling so badly it barely came out. "I didn't do anything, please, please put the gun down," but Karen only tightened her grip. From across the park, I saw the crowd forming, people raising their phones with shaking hands, recording as if time had slowed. I was near the far jogging trail when the screams reached me. At first I thought it was some kids playing, but then I heard my daughter's voice, raw with fear, and I ran harder than I ever had in my life. Every stride felt like a lifetime. Every breath burned. People shouted, "Call 911," but no one dared to intervene, too afraid the slightest movement might trigger Karen's unstable finger. And that finger, God, that finger, was curled so tightly around the trigger that even wind brushing her elbow could have caused the worst. I yelled her name as loud as I could, but she didn't hear me. Her eyes were locked on Karen's gun like it was the only thing in her universe. Karen kept screaming nonsense. "You were spying on my house. You were filming me. You think you can get me arrested? I know you're kind." Words that didn't match reality but revealed how deeply she lived inside her delusions. My daughter tried one last time, her voice soft, soothing, desperate. "Ma'am. I swear, I'm not who you think I am. Please don't hurt me." Instead of calming, Karen's face twitched violently. She took a step closer, shaking the gun so erratically that even people 10 feet away ducked in fear. Someone behind them whispered, "Jesus Christ, she's going to shoot her." Another father grabbed his toddler and shielded him behind a tree. A teenage boy, bravely or foolishly, raised his phone higher to capture every detail, his hands trembling. But the most unexpected person capturing everything was a small boy, maybe 6 or 7, standing shockingly close behind Karen, hidden behind the angle of her body, holding a tiny blue phone with cartoon stickers on it. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't shaking. He just pointed the camera steadily at Karen's back, recording every second from a few feet away. He didn't speak. He didn't run. He stood still like he understood something no one else did, that the truth needed to be filmed clearly. Police sirens faintly echoed somewhere in the distance, getting closer, but not close enough. Karen's breathing grew more frantic, her finger twitching on the trigger. "Back up. Back up or I'll shoot," she barked at my daughter, who was already cornered, palms up, tears slipping down her cheeks as she begged softly, "Please. I'm only 17, please." My legs were on fire as I ran, but the scene felt like a nightmare I couldn't reach in time. The gun wavered, rising toward my daughter's face, and the entire park collectively gasped. A stroller rattled as a mother backed away, clutching her baby, whispering prayers under her breath. A teenage girl fainted behind the swings. And just when Karen's finger tightened on the trigger, when it felt like the world was about to break, my daughter whispered one thing so heartbreakingly soft that even Karen hesitated for half a second. "I don't want to die." That half second became the longest moment of my life. The sirens suddenly grew louder, blaring as a police cruiser screeched near the park entrance. Officers jumped out, guns drawn, shouting commands, but Karen didn't drop hers. She spun toward them with the gun still raised, screaming, "This is self-defense. I'm the victim here." The police froze, assessing, shouting for her to lower the weapon, but she kept swinging it wildly between them and my daughter. The crowd ducked again, several people crying, others whispering, "Please God, please no," and then, everything stopped. One officer yelled, "We have a clear angle, wait, child behind suspect." The small boy behind Karen stood motionless, still recording, his steady little hands capturing the entire truth she didn't want the world to see. Karen glanced back for the first time, realizing too late that she was being filmed point-blank by a child. Her eyes widened, her grip uncontrolled, and the gun wobbled dangerously, just as I finally reached the edge of the circle of terrified witnesses, breathless, heartbroken, praying I wasn't seconds too late. The moment the police rushed into the park, sirens echoing against the trees, Karen jerked her arm upward in panic, the handgun trembling violently as officers surrounded her with weapons drawn, shouting, "Drop the firearm now." She didn't fire, thank God, but she immediately spun around and screamed. She tried to attack me. I was defending myself. This is self-defense. She threatened to kill me. Her voice cracked with manic desperation, her eyes darting wildly between the officers and the dozens of horrified parents recording her from every angle. My daughter, still frozen with her hands up, sobbed, "I didn't do anything, please," and I wrapped my arms around her from behind, shielding her body with mine as the officers slowly approached Karen. She kept yelling, layering lie after lie. She pushed me. She tried to steal from me. She said she'd hurt my dog, even though she didn't have a dog with her, and not a single person in that park had seen my daughter do anything except try to de-escalate. A woman near the swings shouted, "That girl never touched you." Another man added, "She was helping a little kid clean up, you were the one following her." But Karen shook her head violently and pointed toward my daughter. "They're lying for her. They planned this. She's been harassing me for months, she vandalized my property, she sent me threatening notes, and that's when the little boy, maybe 8 years old, stepped forward holding the phone he'd been recording with, eyes wide but brave. "Ma'am," he said timidly, "I got everything on video. You pulled the gun on her for no reason." His mother tried to pull him back, terrified, but the officers asked him to hand over the phone. One officer watched the video right there, his eyebrows lifting higher and higher as Karen's own actions played out on screen, her stalking my daughter, her yelling provably false accusations, her reaching into her bag and pulling out the handgun while my daughter stood still with empty hands. When the officer looked up, the air shifted. He glanced at Karen with a softness of pity mixed with disbelief. "Ma'am, nothing in this video shows her threatening you. It shows the opposite." Karen's face went pale. "That video is fake. Kids edit things, these teens planned it." She was unraveling fast, grasping at excuses that fell apart the second they left her mouth. The officer shook his head. "The timestamps show this was recorded in real time." And that's when the real truth started spilling out, not from witnesses, but from Karen herself. Because when the officers asked why she approached my daughter in the first place, why she followed her across the park with that watchful, obsessive glare, Karen blurted, "Because she was trespassing on HOA grounds last week. She walked near my house. She knows what she did." But that made no sense, we never walked near her house. We didn't even know where she lived. So the officer asked calmly, "What exactly did she do to you?" Karen hesitated, her face twitching. She was near my rose bushes. I saw her. She was plotting something." The crowd gasped, not because the story was shocking, but because it was unbelievably pathetic. A teenage girl walking past her roses? That was the threat? The truth was collapsing around her, and she knew it. My daughter, trembling in my arms, whispered, "Dad, she hates me because I walked past her sidewalk," and I felt anger burn deep in my chest. But before I could say anything, another voice broke through the tension, a man sprinting toward us, breathless, panicked. Karen's son. He pushed through the officers, yelling, "MOM. What did you do?" The moment his eyes landed on the gun in her hand and the terrified girl she'd been aiming at, he went pale as chalk. "Mom, please tell me you didn't." Karen tried to grab him by the arm. "Sweetheart, don't believe them. They're all against me, this girl, this family, the whole neighborhood has been trying to destroy us." But her son pulled away, shaking, tears filling his eyes. "No, Mom, you promised you would stop. After the HOA meeting, after they warned you." The officers exchanged glances. The crowd fell silent. I stepped closer, confused. "Warned her about what?" Karen's son swallowed hard, whispering like he was confessing a crime. "She's been filing fake HOA violations against half the neighborhood for months. She said people were trespassing, vandalizing, threatening her. But none of it was true. She gets these ideas in her head and," he stopped, voice breaking. "She gets obsessed." Karen collapsed to her knees, shaking her head. "You don't understand. I had to protect the neighborhood, nobody listens, nobody takes me seriously," but the officers did not soften. They approached her slowly, firmly. "Ma'am, put the weapon down and stand up." She refused, gripping the gun tighter, until one officer gently but decisively disarmed her. And that's when the twist dropped. As they carefully searched her bag, one officer pulled out something small, metallic, and disturbing, a spare loaded magazine. The crowd gasped. She hadn't just come with a gun. She came prepared to use it. My stomach dropped. My daughter sobbed harder. And her son, realizing the full danger of what she had planned, fell to his knees beside her and cried, "Mom, what were you going to do?" The entire park stood in stunned, breathless silence as the truth finally came out, not just about the lie, not just about the gun, but about how close we all came to witnessing something far, far worse. The days that followed felt like a blur, a mixture of shock, exhaustion, and disbelief as the reality of what had happened settled slowly into our lives, but one thing became clear immediately: justice was finally catching up with Karen. The moment the police pulled her away from the park in handcuffs, screaming nonsense about defending the neighborhood, witnesses stayed behind to give statements: mothers, teenagers, elderly couples, even the little boy who'd bravely recorded everything. By the next morning, the video had circulated through the HOA community like wildfire. People who had once ignored Karen's erratic behavior were suddenly horrified by what she had been capable of. At the emergency HOA board meeting that evening, dozens of residents gathered inside the community clubhouse, anger and disbelief echoing through the room as the board revealed documents showing Karen had filed more than 17 false violations against random families in the past 6 months, each one more outrageous than the last: children breathing too loudly near her hedge, a dog walking suspiciously, a neighbor parking with malicious intent. And shockingly, buried among those papers were notices she had started drafting against my family, falsely accusing my daughter of vandalism, harassment, and even criminal trespassing, all without a shred of evidence. As we sat there listening, my daughter's hands trembled uncontrollably, her eyes welling up again, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming realization that she had been targeted long before the park incident. The community began apologizing to her as if they collectively carried the burden of failing to see the danger sooner. Women who once nodded politely at Karen's morning complaints now approached my daughter with sincere remorse. "We should have spoken up," one said softly. "We knew something was off." In the weeks that followed, the legal process moved forward. The prosecutor handling Karen's case pushed for charges including assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, and filing false reports. During the preliminary court hearing, Karen's lawyer attempted to paint her as misunderstood and stressed, but the moment the judge saw the child's video, the trembling frame capturing Karen screaming, pointing the gun, and inventing accusations, any sympathy evaporated instantly. My daughter had to testify, and watching her sit there, voice shaking but determined, made my chest ache with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. She recounted every detail with honesty and courage, and when the video was played, she closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks as she relived the worst moment of her life. But something remarkable happened: the judge, the courtroom staff, even strangers in the benches looked at her with admiration, not pity. They saw a young girl who had endured terror and still found the strength to speak up. Karen, on the other hand, sat in silence, no smugness, no theatrics, just a hollow expression like the weight of her own lies had finally crushed the arrogance she once weaponized against everyone. After the hearing, the community organized a gathering at the same park where it all happened, not to relive the trauma but to reclaim the space for my daughter. Parents brought handwritten cards, kids brought flowers, and the little blind boy she had helped ran up to her with a homemade bracelet made of blue and white beads. "For you," he said shyly. "Because you're the bravest person I know." My daughter burst into tears, hugging him tightly while the entire crowd applauded, a moment of pure healing after so much chaos. Slowly, she started spending time outside again, walking the dog, jogging near the trail, even volunteering at the park again, but never alone, not until she felt safe. And we let her set the pace. Recovery isn't linear, and she deserved time, patience, and gentleness. A few months later, Karen received her sentencing, including probation, mandated therapy, a restraining order, and an HOA-wide ban from leadership roles. It wasn't the dramatic prison sentence some people hoped for, but it was enough to ensure she could never again use her position, or her rage, to terrorize another family. After the final court day, as we walked to the parking lot, my daughter slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "Dad, do you think this is really over?" I looked at her, the bruises long faded, but the strength in her eyes brighter than ever, and I nodded. "Yes," I told her. "Because you didn't just survive what she did, you stopped her from hurting anyone else." She smiled for the first time in months, a real, full smile that reached her eyes. And in that moment, standing in the cool afternoon breeze outside the courthouse, I finally felt the last piece of fear leave my chest. We were safe. She was healing. And Karen, dangerous, unhinged, reckless Karen, could never touch our lives again. Our story was no longer about trauma, it had become a story of survival, community, justice, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter. And that, more than anything Karen ever tried to destroy, was our victory. If you were in that park, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have stepped in? Would you have called for help? Or would you still be standing there in shock like everyone else that day? Tell me honestly, what would you do if someone pointed a gun at a child right in front of you? And before you go, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know where my community is listening from, because stories like this don't just happen in one neighborhood, they happen all across America, in places we least expect. If this story moved you, scared you, or made you think twice about safety, then hit subscribe so you never miss another real-life story that could save a life. Stay safe. Stay aware. Protect the ones you love.